Logic, by its necessity, by its nature, is transcendent. What this means is if you get in a rocket, you go a million years at the speed of light, you get out, and you walk around, whatever, the laws of logic are still valid. They do not depend on where you are or when you are. Therefore, they are transcendent in that they transcend space and time.
The fact that they apply everywhere within space and time does not mean that they transcend space and time, whatever the fuck that even means. Also, I don't think we can be too confident in saying that they apply everywhere within space and time. The reason it looks this way is because any scenario we try to imagine is a scenario in which logic applies. How can we be certain that this isn't simply something inherent to the way we imagine and experience things, rather than inherent to the things themselves? We can't step outside of our own minds to check whether we are really imagining and experiencing everything as it really is. If you put on red-tinted glasses, everything will look red-tinted, but you shouldn't infer from this that reality has an inherent red tint. It might be the case that we imagine and experience reality through logic-tinted glasses. The strongest claim we can make is that we can't understand what it would mean for reality to not be logical.
Second, they're absolute. They don't change. Third, they are by nature conceptual. You don't look under a rock to find them. You don't take a picture of them. You can't weigh them. You think them. They are thought. They're products of the mind. They are of the mind by their nature.
The laws of logic are conceptual because we infer them from introspective experience. I believe in the law of non-contradiction because if I try to think of something both existing and not existing at the same time and in the same respect, I find that I fail to do so. This law describes this experience. Since that's the case, the laws of logic may be like the laws of physics. If the laws of logic describe how reality works, they may be descriptions of how things behave rather than behests that reality obeys. They are not like laws enforced by a government. They don't need some cosmic enforcement system.
If
logic, you agree with me that everything you've said is consistent with that?
No, not at all. If the model is, if you want to say that, this is what the atheists say, that basically logical absolutes are products of human minds, the problem with that is human minds are different.
Human minds are different, but that doesn't mean they are totally different in every respect. It doesn't mean that there can't be any universal commonalities. It doesn't mean that there is somebody who can conceive of something defying a law of logic.
And what you think is logical and what I think is logical won't always agree.
It will if we are both using the same terms in the same way. If this were not the case, then what you think is logical and what a god thinks is logical won't always agree, and why is a god's logic more correct than anyone else's? If you say, because he knows better, that implies that there is a logic that exists independent of any god, and that your god is simply aware of that logic. It undermines the idea that logic is god-dependent. If you simply define correct as being whatever God says, which I've heard Slick say before, then the assertion that a god's logic is correct is meaninglessly tautological.
The question we have to ask, though, what are the necessary preconditions for transcendental conceptual absolutes?
I don't think the laws of logic are transcendental conceptual absolutes. They seem to be absolutes that apply to all thought and experience, and that's all we need them to be. We don't deal with anything beyond thought and experience, so we don't need logic to apply beyond thought and experience. I don't see how we can even know that it does or does not apply beyond thought and experience, because thought and experience are our only means of investigating anything. Slick has elsewhere argued that a god is a necessary precondition for intelligibility because intelligibility requires consistency, and consistency requires a conscious mind to impose order. This conclusion is a non sequitur, of course. It assumes that the default state of space, time, matter, and energy is random nonsensicality. This is a baseless assumption. I see no reason why consistency and regularity needs to be imposed upon mindless matter. If matter already acts with consistency, without the need of a deity imposing consistency upon it, then there is no reason to be surprised that matter can form brains that function according to those same consistencies, and as a result become aware of them. Intelligibility does not need to be forced upon reality by any transcendent intelligence. I also have a Patreon if you're into that kind of thing.